right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us today for another quaint tip session on the SAP out-of-the-box functionality. Today, we're going to be featuring budget setup and reporting within SAP. We will be speaking specifically about how you enable budgets in your database, as well as how you can enable specific GL accounts to be budget relevant. We'll be talking through how you set up different budget scenarios, importing and copying budgets, as well as different budget distribution methods that you can use. And finally, we'll touch base on some of the out-of-the-box budget reporting that you have available to you to compare your budgets to actuals within the system. So let me navigate right now to the system and we will get started showing you some of that functionality. All right, so inside your database, initially you do not have the budget enabled in your database. So in order to do that, you're going to navigate to your system initialization area and general settings. And within your general settings, you have a whole bunch of different tabs here. And we're going to specifically start with the budget tab, as you see here. In order to enable budgeting and all of the different modules related to budgeting inside the database, you are going to want to check this box, which initializes that in the system. And then you have a couple different options here to allow the system to tell you what's going on with regards to your budgeting once it's set up. So you have the option to block deviations, which means that if you have a GL account that's exceeding a budgeted amount, the system will actually give you an error message and tell you that you're exceeding that amount and not let you put it in. Or you have the option of doing a warning, which just gives you a pop-up message that tells you that you're exceeding an amount on a budget. Or you have the option to say without warning, which just means you don't want to, have anything alert the users. You're just going to use the out-of-the-box reporting to kind of show you where you are instead of having alerts as you're doing stuff in the system. Most of the time, we would probably suggest that you would use the warning or without warning. The block deviation could be relatively annoying towards the end of the year. So I would suggest probably using the warning to first start and then consider maybe not using the warning later on, depending on how you're feeling about the budgeting or how strict you need to be with regards to your budgeting. You also have the options here to say whether or not you want to do reporting for an annual budget or for monthly budgeting. And then you have options here on which documents you actually want these warning messages and things to display on. So again, if you do a warning or a block, you're saying, is it going off of the annual amounts to give you that warning or block or monthly amounts? And then which specific documents or areas in the system do you actually want those flagged? So you can pick and choose. But again, I would stay away from the blocking completely and maybe just do warnings to start out to see how you feel about it if this is your first time enabling. The other thing we need to be aware of in the system when you're setting up the budget is the hide functions over here. What you want to ensure is that you are not hiding the budgeting area. So if you're not utilizing this, a lot of times it is nice to block certain functionality, but we want to make sure that once you turn that on, that is not checked for any reason, so you can see the new areas in the main menu that show up. Once you have that initialized in your system, we will navigate down into the financial area here. And there is a folder down towards the bottom called Budget Setup, where we have different areas here. First, we're going to start with budget scenarios. So our scenarios are basically like the different budget buckets, if you will. You can have many different scenarios for a given year. As you can see here, I have the option to create budgets for many different years, and within a year, then I can have as many different budgets as I want. The nice thing about this is it allows you to then run different scenarios. For instance, I can have, in this example, a main budget. I can actually create another budget that maybe is a optimistic budget, And I could say, hey, I want this budget to be based on my main budget, but at like 100%, 110% ratio. So mark it up a little bit because I'm feeling like I'm feeling optimistic about where we're going. I could also create maybe a pessimistic budget that says, okay, base it off my main budget, but show me where we are budgeting at like 90% or 95%. So the way to do that, if you right click on your budget here and you say add row, you could create a new one. So let's say we're going to do the optimistic budget. And again, this based on column is letting me say that I'm basing it off of this one. And then I can say I want to do it at 110%. So again, what that's going to do is it's actually going to copy all the amounts from this main budget for me and do the math to mark them up an additional 10%. And we can kind of look at those numbers in a little bit once we get into the actual budgets themselves where we set all those. You can also, as you see down here, copy scenarios and import scenarios. So an import scenario would be if I had multiple databases, which we'll walk through one right now. And I have a budget that I really like and I already set up in one database and I need the same kind of one over here. Maybe I need the exact same one here, or maybe I need it so then I can mark it up. I can actually, log into the system as if I was logging in, with my normal user. So I'm connecting to that other database. It will then show me the list of budgets that I have already created in that database. So let me say I'm going to take this one from 2021. And then it's going to ask me, okay, where do you actually want to copy that to? I can override an existing one if I want, or I can say define new, which is going to take me back to this area where then I can create the shell of the budget. So I'm going to call this one import budget 2024. And now if I click execute, it's actually going to go out and copy, as you see down here, operation successful. It's going to copy that budget from the other database in here for me automatically. So now, just to show you, if I go out here to this import budget real quick, I should have some values. Yep, some values now instead of just a blank canvas from that other database. And now I can edit or do whatever I need to. So that's a really nice feature to go from database to database. I can also copy from within a database. So I can use this copy scenario, which it's asking me from within the database I'm already in, what do I want to do? So I can say, hey, let me take this main budget from 2024, and I want to create a new one again. This one I'm going to call copy budget 2024. And this one, it's going to copy the exact one that I have already from this database. You can here pick and choose which ones if you wanted to only choose certain accounts or only choose certain types of accounts. You do have this drop down window here. I forgot to mention that lets you go down just like on your financial GL accounts windows that lets you get down into the actual nitty gritty of specific accounts. So if I only wanted to choose certain ones, I can do that. It's kind of hard to see the screen, but here you go. I can choose just certain ones and click the X. For now, I'm going to copy everything, but I do have that possibility if I just want to do a few. Click execute. You'll see I had that successful window. And again, then I would have values in my copy budget from that main budget. Let's look into one of these budgets right now. Let's go into our main budget. To navigate actually into the budget itself, where you set the values for your budget by GL account, you would navigate to that budget setup area again under the financial module, and we're going to go into budget. Here I have the selection to choose which budget I want to look at. I'm going to go with the main budget for now. Or actually, I'm going to go into my imported budget for a second. Again, here I can choose if I just want to see specific accounts or not. And for now, I'm going to choose to show everything. But if I wanted to, again, choose this, navigate down to specific accounts that I want to see. And then I can see just those as they relate to what I need to do with budgeting here. Okay. So a couple of things to note here. as you see, I'm opening this window. Defaulting, there's a checkbox up here that is usually checked, unchecked like this. And so what it shows is initially you may see nothing. And so I want to bring your attention to this because a lot of people miss this and then go, Liz, there's nothing working on my budget. Make sure you're checking to show any accounts that have no budget currently. And the reason for that is as you're doing a budget, it helps that you can sort if you don't want to see everything. But let's say you're like, oh, well, there's this one account that I missed. Why isn't it showing? More than likely, it's this checkbox up here. The other reason that a GL account may not show is because the other setup in the system that we need to be aware of is on a GL account itself, which if we navigate into a GL account here, let's say our revenue accounts, on each GL account, if you go into the account details area, which is that extra window, there is a checkbox to say whether an account is relevant to the budget or not. So if after you set up your budgets and stuff, you're trying to find a specific account and you can't find it or it's not populating, whether or not you have that checkbox to show $0 ones or not, it is more than likely that that GL account that you have is not set to be relevant to budgeting. Therefore, it will not show. This happens a lot of times if you are creating a new GL account for something in a new year without checking that box. It would not show on your budget. So then when you go to do the budget, you'd be missing it. So again, check this box. Click update here. Remember that on the GL accounts, you have to click the additional update button here to save it for sure. And then after that save, navigate back to your budget. Make sure this is checked to show the no budget, and it should show up in your budget. Once you have all that set up and you're seeing all the accounts that you expect to see, you have different options here. Specifically with regards to distribution methods. So distribution methods are another setup that you'll see over here under our budget setup area. They are the way in which, because as you can see here, right now, you're seeing kind of an annual amount for your budget that you can allocate. And a lot of times we want to be able to put in information down to the month. And so you have options to use the out-of-the-box distribution methods, which SAP gives you 3. Let me show you the different options here. Go into find mode. So you have equal, ascending, or descending. And what these do is equal basically will automatically help distribute the annual amount that you put into your budget equally across all of the months, as you see here. And you can set up new methods as you like, depending on how you guys distribute. But it's basically using a factor method to say how should it be allocated. So another example in the ascending, you'll see that it increases the value as the year goes on. And then descending, it starts off with a higher factor and then decreases the value of the factor. A lot of times people are using equal. Sometimes there may be a different way that you want to allocate. And then there's also the option of choosing to manually allocate, which means you just pick and choose what specific months. So how this works is, as you see here, we have an example of a debited amount of 10,000 as our budget. We're saying equal distribution. To actually see the monthly amounts allocated to your budget, you're going to double click on the row in question. And that's going to show you the allocations based on this distribution method that you have set. So because we have equal, you'll see that it's equally distributing that 10,000 across each month. Now I can go in here and I can change this dollar amount as needed, or I can choose, let's choose to do ascending here, just to show you that example. And you'll see how this changes to my monthly budgeting amounts based on that. Now, again, I do have the option to define new as needed or click manual, in which case manual highlights red, so I know it's manually distributed, but then also lets me pick and choose. So I could say, well, really, this is, you know, something we only do in May and June, let's say. So I can manually allocate it as needed. Oops, update differences. There we go. And then that will save, and you'll see that that's saved here. So you have a lot of flexibility on how you want to do this. Again, those distribution methods out of the box are just helping you allocate it, but you can change it around as needed for whatever your needs are. And this comes into play when we talk about the reporting, where as you're running the reports, if you want to run them by month, that month allocation is how you're going to see the difference between budgeted and actual by month. Okay, instead of an annual report. On the annual side, these distribution methods don't really matter. Another thing you can do in here is you can do distributions or allow the system to do the math for you based on another account. So you could say here, okay, this, let's say the meals account, I actually want this based on travel expense account. I don't know why we would do that, but I'm just using this one. And you can say, this is actually like 25% of that account. All this is doing is basically doing the math for you. Okay, it is not taking away from the other account that you're saying is the parent account at all. It's simply just another method to get your end dollar amount that you want, but allowing the system to do some of the math for you. One thing to note, I've had customers ask me this before. You can have your budget, let's say you do it in Excel and you want to copy paste into here. You can use the copy paste feature from Excel to fill out these numbers. As always, the rule of thumb is make sure that your accounts and amounts are in the exact order as is shown in SAP before you copy paste. Because it will literally just go through line by line, copy pasting them in for you. But it does not take into account, it's going to do it based on the order here. So just make sure that those match up before you copy paste, but you can absolutely do that. There's also ways to do DTW imports and things like that if needed, if you have really large budgets. So those are also options. But a lot of times customers like this flexibility. If they have one already in the system, they copy it and they kind of just tweak it as needed. If you have cost centers, I'm going to go to another one. I think that I already have some cost centers in just to kind of show you. There are ways to budget as well by specific cost centers and dimensions. So as you see here as an example, you can right click on an account and it will say add cost center, and you can choose which cost center you want, and it will give you these additional lines as you're seeing here. Like, let me show you on this one. Let's say I want to add a cost center here. It's going to add that row and then allow me to allocate the budget for that row based on a specific dimension. So there are those capabilities as well. Things to note here is that you have a drop down at the top if you have dimensions and cost centers enabled in the system to do that by the different cost centers. So right now I'm on our first cost center, which is for branch. If I needed to do that for product line, I need to do this drop down menu. And then I would actually see the cost center options for that specific dimension. So those are options as well. If you need it, just wanted to let you know that. So moving on from here, unless there's any questions, if anybody has any questions, feel free to interrupt me before I move on to the reporting. But otherwise, we're going to move on to that, and I'll show you some of the out-of-the-box reports that we have available to us. So going down into again, we're in the financial module. If we go down here into our financial reporting, we have a bucket here for budget reports, and we have a few different kinds. Probably the main two that are utilized would be the main budget report and the profit and loss statement. But let's just look at these. So as with any other SAP report, you have a lot of different filter options to get exactly what you need. You have the option to run this as an annual, quarterly, or monthly report. You have the option to run it by a specific scenario. So we'll use our main budget here for an example. You can display for the whole year, or you can choose to just do, let's say you just are reporting through like August, you can choose to just click here. If you hold down the shift button, you can choose which months you're actually using. And so then it will only run the budget through what's budgeted through August. And then again, you have those options of choosing which accounts you want to see or specific accounts if you want to. You choose that different drop down for the levels to get to a specific GL account. And then you can click execute. In this display, you'll see that my to and from days are updated based on that monthly range that I provided. And this is looking very summarized. That is because on this view, I also have that detail option of the different levels I want to go down to. So I'm going to expand this to the most detailed. And here I will see the annual amounts for things that I budgeted, and then the actuals that are actually posted in the system. I don't have a lot of information for 2024 right now, but you can see then I have those variances, the difference in amounts and the difference in percentage to kind of go up after. Okay, so that's the main budget report. Let's look at the profit and loss statement real quick. Again, same kind of scenario here where I can run it for a whole year or a partial year. I can run it for a specific scenario. Let's just run it for, our main budget again. I can choose to include accounts with zero balance or not, budget relevant accounts only, and then I can also run it for annual, quarterly, or monthly. So let's look at the annual here. So again, we're seeing the budgeted amount by account. You'll see I have the different levels here if I need to summarize that. I have my actuals and the differences. So this is the annual view. Let's look at our monthly view. So here we have the totals to start, but we now have the option to see this month by month. So you'll see here in the header, now I have January amounts, which based on my allocations, again, those distribution methods, I'm seeing amounts by month. And then if the actuals were posted in there, and then my variances accordingly. So lots of different options here to run them by and to get different information about how you're doing with regards to your budgets. So does anybody have any specific questions with regards to budgeting or anything I went over here? I want to open it up to questions to see if anybody has anything I can answer for you. All right, well, that sounds like I must have done a decent job. So if nobody has any questions, I just want to let you guys know that we out on our website, we have step-by-step instructions of basically everything I went over today. You can find that under our budgeting, setup, and reporting. We have a PDF for you available. And we also have a cool takeaway today for a budget spend alert setup. So we gave you a freebie of an alert that you can set up that will show you, will alert you if there's a certain percentage, if you want to be alerted to a certain percentage of use of a specific account or anything like that. It will give you all the steps on how to set that up, troubleshooting your alert, and give you the actual query that it's based off of. So both of those are available to you out on our website. And as always, thank you for attending another one of our Quaint Tips sessions. Be on the lookout for this video being up on our YouTube channel, as well as other webinars that are coming each month. We look forward to having you on our next webinar. Thank you all for attending today.